We have Rebbetzin Goldie Plotkin from Canada. She is like, you're going to love her. She's just yummy and warm. And we're going to go through one by one how to do this and what to do and how to be the best you. Stay tuned. Don't miss it. Leah Richeimer for the Ladies Talk Show. Yay! We have such an amazing show. You're going to be so excited. So here's the thing. If you're going through tough times, first of all, who isn't going through tough times? Like, let's be serious, okay? We have some amazing stories for you today. Goldie Plotkin from Canada, and she is amazing. Actually, you're going to have to tell me, it's Harcum. I couldn't pronounce it. Markham in Thornhill, Ontario. Okay, let me introduce you in 1 second. So here's the thing. Everybody, start typing your questions because we're going to talk about how to deal with tough times. And we call it when the going gets tough, but obviously the second half of that sentence, the tough get going. We're going to learn how to be tough. So the first question, first of all, welcome on the Ladies Talk Show. Rebbetzin Goldie Plotkin, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Okay, so here's the thing. We go very fast, deep, so I'm going to start with really hard-hitting questions. I hope that's okay. I already warned you. Okay. I'm going to interrupt you 10 times because when Sarit comes on with questions from people. So we'll start writing your questions in. So here's the thing. You're going to tell us, how to pick yourself up by the bootstraps when you're having a tough time, whether it's with COVID, whether it's with your husband, whether it's with your children, whatever the tough time is. How do you go into a source and find the strength to carry on, the tools to carry on, the practical advice? That's what we want from you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you came to such awesome strategies, because we got a lot of emails leading up to this saying, "Oh, you're having her on. You have to tell her to tell your stories about her kids and blah, blah, blah." So we're very, very anxious to hear, how do you get through tough times?
Well, who doesn't? We're living in Golos, right? Everyone has. But it really hit home 18 years ago. I was delivering my 8th child, and this little boy comes flying out, and the doctors look at him, and within 2 minutes, they say to me, he's got trisomy 21. That is another medical term for Down syndrome. They plopped him on my chest and ran. And my husband is standing there, and we look at each other, and we go, oh my gosh, how do you get ready for this? 8th child, special needs? That's not what we bargained for. And we looked at each other in the eyes and we said like this: when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Where are we going to find our strength? Clearly, it's our tradition, it's our Torah, it's our sources. And because my husband and I are shluchim, we are Rabbi Rebbetzin here in Toronto, we have been giving so many classes and so many shiurim, but here's the key, Leah. We had to realize no more talking the talk. It's time to walk the walk. I know I'm from Toronto and I have a New York accent. But
hello. We're with you. You're yummy. Go ahead.
But the idea was that we were going to look into where we can find our strength. And we did. And I came up, together, my husband and I found 5, I would say, Talmudic and Hasidic tools that really, they gave us that push. And it's not like after we had that wow discovery, things were just so easy. There was daily challenges with a special needs child, and with so many things in life, things come up again
and dealing with how he would integrate with the rest of the family, and how it's going to affect this one's, everybody in the whole family. It kind of turns everything. I mean, new baby does that in any case, but now it's kind of like a whole different, like it was. A lot of people have said it's kind of like you get on a train, like, wait, this isn't the train that I was standing on the platform. I was getting on that train. How did I end up on this train? So totally get it. It's kind of.
By the way, Leah on Facebook, they're already saying she's amazing.
Oh.
So she didn't have to say more than a few words. I think it's the Brooklyn accent. That must be it.
There you go. So you're saying now, looking back 18 years, you came up with let's talk about that initial, like, where did you go from, woe is me, is God punishing me, life handed me, something, lemons, it handed me something too hard. Where did that go, and how did that transition go where you're like, okay, we're the tough are getting it going. We're going to do this now. We got this. Where did it, like that transition? I want to know. I want you to tell us step by step how I can do it, how anyone who's listening can follow your footsteps to transition.
You want me to be real, raw, and honest, right, Leah? Honest.
Total honesty.
Because it's only me and you. No one else is listening, right?
Okay. Let's hear. I'm all ears.
So because I was raised in a Chabad home, I was very aligned with Hasidic philosophy. And the basis of Hasidic philosophy is called the Tanya. I give a lecture on it every week. It's on Facebook. And one of the things in Hasidic philosophy is that it's really a platform for life. It helps you with
navigate.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. So I was really down. I was challenged. Don't forget, I was a mother of 8, plus I was a Rebbetzin of a shul, a preschool director. Like, I felt like my life was crumbling down. I remember calling my father in New York, and I said, Ta, I just can't deal with this. This is, I could be optimistic, I could be positive, but this is way beyond anything I can handle. And he said to me, Goldie, go take the Tanya off the shelf in your living room. I pulled the Tanya, he says, turn to chapter 26. And right there, I remember exactly where I was standing in my kitchen, between the kitchen and the family room. I open up this book of Tanya and we start to study what does it mean, depression versus sadness, or sadness versus bitterness. And the Shnei Zalman Eliadi, the author of the Tanya, the Baal HaTanya, he gives you really internal mechanisms to begin to see life, almost like the word today is reframing. And
okay, let's hear all about that. Tell me all, because we talked a little in the pre-show interview and you were telling me about reframing, and like, I know everybody wants to sort of know what is the secret to that? How do you do that? We had Rabbi Leah Plotkin on the show and he also talked about reframing. Unbelievable. Watch that show, everybody. It was awesome. So how do you like shift your whole, how did you do it? How did you shift?
Okay, so is it okay if I share with you some Talmudic tools that could be takeaways for your crowd?
100%.
Okay, so there's a pasuk that I'm going to quote, and it is, it's in Hebrew, but I'll translate it in English. The pasuk is, Yisro Eina Mivakosh Ela Lefi Kocho. It's a medrash in Parsha Pekudei, and it says, God doesn't ask of you more than you can handle. Wow. So that means God thinks I can handle this. A story
that he had the wrong address, right? Wrong address. Like, hello, you thought the next door neighbor could handle it. Me? I don't think so. Right? Hello. Okay, so good.
So I want to share with you a story. Is it okay if I share with you one of my favorites?
Please, we're here to listen to you. We got all ears. Go.
Yitzchak Perlman. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. World famous violinist from Israel. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but I was really privileged to go watch him in concert here in Toronto. But the story that really, really affected me was when he was in Manhattan. He was playing for a huge audience. Now, Yitzhak Perlman was struck with polio when he was a child. And so he walked actually with, he had assistance in his legs because he wasn't able to walk himself up on the stage. And when the audience would be watching Yitzhak Perlman, I know because I watched him, everyone waits till till he sits down because it's nerve-wracking, Anyway, so that evening, it was in Aver Fisher Hall, actually. He's sitting down, he pulls out his very expensive violin, and as he begins to play his first note, there's a loud crack. And the entire audience goes, what happened? One of his strings broke. Now, anyone who plays violin, there is no way you can play even one song with 3 strings. You need 4 strings on a violin, especially if you're Yitzhak Perlman playing in front of thousands and thousands of guests. So everyone thought, oh no, woe is Yitzhak Perlman. He's gonna have to get up and walk across the hall with his polio. This is terrible. But that's not what happened. That night, Yitzhak Perlman played with such passion, with such power, and such purity that he was actually changing and recomposing the entire music as he was going along with his only 3 strings. It's nearly impossible to play a concerto with 3 strings, but Yitzhak Perlman recomposed an entire music.
As he's playing, he thought, oh, I can't hit the D flat, so I have to do the whatever.
Crazy. It's almost like not even realistic. No one's done that before. Like I'm saying on a scale of Yitzhak Perlman. When he finished his concert, the entire audience erupted in applause that went on and on and on. Finally, everyone sat down, and I want to paraphrase the words that he said. He said, sometimes the artist's task is to find out how much music we can make with what we have left. So it's no big kunz, which means it's no big whoop, right? Is that a word? It's no big whoop to play a beautiful concert. If you're Yitzhak Perlman on 4 screens, listen, he's been groomed for this. But when you are thrown into a loop, you have 7 children and your 8th child should have come out healthy, and suddenly your baby's not, or you were on a plane and something was supposed to go right and instead it went wrong, or you applied for a job and you were refused and suddenly you're out of a job. Your marriage was supposed to be beautiful and honeymooning and glorious, and suddenly there's a detour. That, Yitzhak Perlman says, is where the artist's greatest task is. We have to learn how to play the music using 3 strings. And going back to the medrash that I said, Hashem doesn't ask us more than we can handle. So I really believe that. And that's why learning Tanya, learning that chapter 26, which I've taught so many times, and I've actually assisted so many women that are going through a little slump. I said, open up the sources. We have a Torah, Leah. We have the greatest gift in the world. We don't have to run for, other alternatives. Let's look at the Torah.
I'm getting flagged down with a lot of different questions. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So we have on Instagram Chana Batsheva, who said she's so happy that you're on, and you are so special. So that's just like right off the bat, we got to give some props. We're getting a lot of hearts. Someone on Instagram asked if you could speak about the different languages of love when it comes to marriage, and how, I'm not sure how that pertains to difficulties, but this is the question coming too. So I guess they do want you to veer off a little bit, but Leah can decide. She's saying because being marriage is the challenge. Marriage is where things are tough. How do you deal with that challenge?
Right. Okay. So I actually don't want to go into the because that's somebody else's work, whatever. And I'm not even sure. Fine. I don't have a hector from any Rav to talk about somebody else's work, or I might get, God forbid, we get sued.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know.
So
I think she had given a lecture once on it. They must have found it to talk more on that. So we can't really go into that topic. But I do want, if you can, answer the question in terms of what, in terms of marriage, if the tough thing that someone's getting thrown at, and that's why we're here today, Ladies Talk Show, marriage, and relationships getting closer, how would you say, how would you answer that? So this thing, Hashem only gives you what you can survive, or what you could, what'd you say?
What you can handle.
What you can handle, right? So God can only gives you what you can handle. So God gave you this man, and I get all the time, I'm telling you, Rebbetzin, I get all the time, I just married the wrong guy. That must be what it is, and we have to understand, I've asked this to many rabbis, because I'm like, this is a real problem. Like everybody, I get that way too often. And the point is that if you stood under the chuppah with that man and you married that man, what the Rebbeim were telling me is somehow that had God's stamp of approval on it. Maybe was the right man, wasn't the right man. These are questions, they're so spiritual and so esoteric. In fact, if you say, oh, he's not the right man, that's the problem. It robs you of all your power to fix it and to make it better, right? So the key is to understand, for some reason, God gave me this, yes, my husband doesn't pay attention to me, or he doesn't care enough, or I keep reminding him about this and that, and he doesn't remember. Whatever it is that you've been given, whatever you've been handled, is what the Rebbetzin saying, whatever you've been given, God only, you are uniquely qualified to handle those issues. And that's what it sounds like you did with this challenge.
I know that we want to stick to this topic, but there's 2 things I want to say. We know, and a Rebbeim will back this, if God forbid it's a toxic relationship and there's emotional, physical, sexual abuse, there are That's why there is
divorce, right?
To get out, there's a get, and that has to be taken care of.
Right.
But before we get to that, I call that, before you amputate your arm, you go to so many doctors to see if they can find the help for your arm, because no one's cutting off their arm just because, oh, this arm has an infection. Why am I keeping the arm? Leah, it's so funny. I think I talk about this a lot. I do a lot of marriage counseling in my community and out of Canada as well. And I talk so much about it because I really feel it identifies with my son, Zalmi. When we found out that Zalmi was Down syndrome, my husband and I didn't look at each other and say, well, we're going to give Zalmi a year. If he doesn't figure out how to walk and talk, then you know what? He's gone. We'll go get rid of him and find another child. It's like, what? Zalmi's our kid. He's clearly a neshama that belongs to us. We will do whatever it takes, even if it's hard. And we had to spend thousands of dollars on therapy, and we had to change our entire house with locks and keys, and you can't imagine what we had to redo. But we were not disposing of our child. Sometimes I think we're living in the mindset of a disposable society. We throw out computers and phones and dishes, and we throw out cars. Oh, it's not good, get another one. And that really, I think, really affects our psyche, and we begin to think that way. The marriage doesn't work.
Disposable society, yeah. No, you're right. You're saying you wouldn't get rid of your right arm, that you should think of your husband as at least as crucial to your existence as your right arm.
First, go to all the places of help. Get the help. Whether there's therapists, there's Rabbanim, there's coaches, there's Rebbetzin. There's so much in the Jewish community that can help.
Marriage Secrets. Okay, hello. This is it has 220 Torah sources in it. This is Leah Richeimer. This is my book. I don't know if you know that. Anyway, there's 220 sources in it. I make no money from it. All the money goes for Shalom Bias, so I can push it as much as I want. Marriage Secrets.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's just an art scroll book on marriage secrets. So there's that. But there's a lot of books. In fact, Goldie, maybe you should write a book. I mean, anyone who's watching should write a book. I don't care if you outsell my book. I don't make money anyhow. But it's so desperately needed. People need answers, and with so much frustration and so much anger. Let's go on to number 2, and we have more questions from Sarit. Are you okay? So let me go to number 2. So you said when the going gets tough, the first thing is that Hashem only gives you what you can survive. The second thing is you said connecting to a tzaddik. So what did you mean by that?
Oh, so we are so lucky. We are so gebenched that we have the greatest teachers and mentors and tzaddikim and sitkaniot. We have our matriarchs, our patriarchs that have lessons, depths and depths of lessons that can teach us how to handle a challenge. And I'll give you one story that I absolutely love. It's a story about the Blodgeva Rebbe. His name was Yisrael Spiro, and he's actually a Holocaust survivor. He was interned in the Yanofska camp during the Holocaust. And no matter if you were a rabbi or an atheist, you ended up in the same bunk room, unfortunately, Rahman al-Islam. And this Rabbi Israel Spiro was befriended by an atheist also from Poland. And they became very, very close. And every night after a day of torture and hunger, they would be near each other and they would talk about God, philosophy. Do you believe? I don't believe. Anyway, one night the Nazis barged into their barracks and started to yell in the most despicable ways that we know they can. And they ordered them all to stand outside in the field. All the men had to stand around this large pit that had been dug earlier that morning. And they're standing around this pit, and the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, start shouting at the poor, hungry Jewish men. And they said, you jump over the pit. And if you can't jump over the pit and you fall in, and they motion with their guns, and they start to laugh. One by one, the very tired and hungry men tried to jump over. Most of them didn't have the energy to make it over the pit. It was time for Yisrael's Rabbi Spiro to try to jump. The young man, this atheist, says to him, Rabbi Spiro, don't make a fool out of yourself. Don't bother jumping. They're going to laugh at you and they're going to kill you anyway. Just walk in and sit down and let's end our life with dignity. And Rabbi Spiro says, absolutely not. Where there's hope, there's life. And so he says, say with me the pasuk, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And he jumped. He opens his eyes and he made it over the pit. He's shocked. And then he looks next to him and his friend, the secular Jew, is standing with him too. So the secular Jew says to him, Rabbi Spiro, how in the world did you, an elderly Jew, make it over the pit? He says, it wasn't me. I was holding on to the coattails of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, and my grandfather and my great-grandfather. I held on to their coattails, and they carried me over the pit. But, he says, how did you get over the pit? And he says, I held on to your coattails. And I actually just got the shivers because I really believe that when we hold on to the coattails of our imahot, avot, our tzaddikim, our rabbeim, we can get over hurdles and challenges in our life that seem insurmountable, but with their help, we can do it.
Wow. So how does that work? Right, Sarit? Like, hello. So how does that, in practical terms, what does that mean a person should do? What is holding onto a coattails? Okay, I'm in. I'm in. How do you do that?
As a Chabad shlucha, as a Chabad chassid, I am very connected to my Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I grew up in Crown Heights in his presence. After the Rebbe was Nifter, Gimel Tammuz, we go to daven at the Rebbe's oil. People all over the world go to tzaddikim. They go to daven at kevers, at tombstones of great tzaddikim.
So I would say take another thing that's a lot more practical, which is that the rabbis who are in their community now, who they're kind of like, maybe they're asking the question every once in a while and, forget it. I'm not going to buy those potato chips because they don't have the right texture. I'm just not going to buy them. And you're like, well, why don't you just ask if that's a good, whatever? Nah, ask, get yourself somebody. And, there's a big secret on this planet Earth, which is the rabbis are extremely busy. They're doing 14 jobs in one or whatever. The Rebbetzins are their support system, but sorry, Rebbetzin, but Rebbetzins are often much more accessible. So especially for women, that's who's listening here today, is to find a Rebbetzin that you can ask these questions to. You don't always have to go to the rabbi, but attach yourself to the people in your community that you reach out, make that effort. It's kind of like, oh, I can't be bothered and I'm not going to, whatever, or he doesn't, they don't have time for me. And why should I call with my stupid question? You are, just like Rebbetzin was saying, that God only gives you what you can handle. A rabbi also, the amazing story, I think I might have told this recently, maybe, I don't remember if I told you, but it was, I believe it was Moshe Feinstein in New York, who was the gadol of our generation, the last generation. He was nifter. I'm going to get please forgive me, I'm going to get the story wrong, but the point of it is so moving and powerful. And he died. And that Friday afternoon, his son picks up the phone and says, yes, hello, is Rabbi Feinstein there? And he said, oh, I'm really sorry to report that my father was nifter and, we're sitting Shiva or whatever. And she started crying, the woman at the other end of the phone. And she said, well, could you please just at least tell me what time Shabbos candles lighting is this week? And he looked it up and gave her the time. And she said, for the last 20 years, every Friday afternoon, that's how I would know when to light my candles. I'm like, this is the person who's like deciding life and death issues. His, the rabbi, he doesn't have the answer. He goes to him, then it gets to him. And he's answering that question to this person. This is his chesed. This is his act of kindness. This is what he sees as his avoda, his work to do. And that's what he did. So when you're reaching out to this rabbis and Rebbetzin and trying to connect with them, don't feel like you're less than or whatever. That's their job. That they signed up for that. Maybe I don't want to overburden rabbis and Rebbetzins. I don't want to do that, but I do believe that time expands. If they had 5 calls a day, they'll handle 5. If they had 50, somehow God will help them help you. So,
by the way, Leah, you're so right. And I want to tell you something. My husband's a Rav here in the city. And he loves getting calls. He says, if I don't get calls, I worry if they're keeping kosher. I wonder if they're doing Shabbos. Getting calls is what a rabbi wants to do. And any rabbi that tells you they're too busy, I don't know. A rabbi can never be too busy. That's his calling. And you're so right.
Yeah.
You're so right.
Yeah. And I mean, if he is too busy, then he needs to say, I'm too busy. Here's somebody, here's a phone number. He can find another rabbi to, what's that called? Turf them. Okay, let's go on to number 3. And we have more questions. Give me 1 second, Serena. I'm just going to start with the third topic, which is to think positively. So this sounded very good. I know everybody would love that. So why don't you talk a little bit? Did you have a question on that, Sarita? Or wait a second.
Yeah, no, somebody said actually on Facebook, but they really relate to the rabbi story because they always feel like, what does the rabbi want to hear from me? I'm a divorced mother. I feel so scared to call the rabbi to reach out for a question.
Yeah, it's so important. Thank you for sharing that. And you should just know that's their avoda. I actually have a story of a Rebbetzin very close to Rebbetzin, and she always got these people dumped on her lap. Like, the rabbi would call and say, oh, there's this guy and, he's having challenges. Can you help him? She's like, okay, fine. So she would, there's a guy, he doesn't have a job, doesn't have a place to live, doesn't have anything. So she would call in all her favors and she'd say, I know you were going to get rid of your car. Do you mind donating it to this guy? He really needs it. And she called an almana, he doesn't have any suits. Can your husband suit so he can look for a job? And then she would call in her friends and say, can you give him a job, interview or whatever? And then he wouldn't show up to the job interview. And she would her whole life would be wrapped up in helping this guy. And she said she always resented it. And they always picked her because she did a good job of rustling up all her favors from people. And one time she was helping somebody and she had a pit in her stomach. The car he was supposed to pick up from somebody, he didn't pick up. He didn't get it washed. He didn't pick the suits up. He didn't make it to the interview. And she was doing all this to help him. And it was all going horrible. And she was lying in bed, just tossing through. And she said, you know what? While I'm taking care of God's children, my kid who was doing bad in math is doing great now. My other kid who was getting bullied is now made friends with the bully. My, husband who was having a hard time in his company is doing better. And she started looking at her life and realizing when she takes care of other people, when she takes care of God's children, he takes care of her own children. And so I'm just saying, this is the mentality for the rabbis and rebbetzins. You should not feel bad or like you're imposing. Don't become an annoying person in their life. But this is that connection, like you're saying, those coattails are going to be what's going to get you through a tough time. Let's go to the next one of thinking positively. Go right ahead.
Okay, so you must have heard this saying, "Trach gut wird sein gut." You know what that means?
We'll translate it.
Think positive, it will be positive. It's Yiddish. And actually, after my Zalmi was born, our little boy with Downs, my mother sent me a big poster and I hung it up in my kitchen for just so that I should be able to think positive. And I think that when you see, we talk about the glass half empty, the glass half full, right. But Trachgut, actually, it's a very interesting thing. When you give out positive vibes, this is what you get back. When you put out a positive energy, that's what you get back. Like attracts like. And in Yiddish, we say, trach gut, you think good, you are creating your reality. And I remember a very dear friend of mine, it was a few years ago, she had cancer, a young mother of a few boys, and she suffered terribly. She was in the hospital for about a year, in and out. It was just tragic. After she came out recently from the hospital, she sent a letter to myself and some of her friends. And she writes like this: yesterday I had my port removed, symbolizing the end of a long journey that started 11 months ago. While I have lost so much physically, I have gained so much.
What's a port? I'm sorry, I got confused. What's a port?
That's what they use to inject the chemotherapy. All the different treatments that they have to wear a port during the whole time. So they don't want to keep putting it in.
Sorry, I went to a boat. I know.
Yeah, my God.
I was so confused. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That thing. Okay, fine.
So she writes, there are 10 things that I learned, but the one thing that she writes, number 2, she says, why did I make it? Oh, sorry, over here. The way in which we approach each day influences the type of day that we will experience. When you wake up and decide to have a good day, you will have one. Because no matter what curveball the day will throw you, by making the decision to be positive, you will not get out of the ballpark. A wonderful Rebbetzin told me, think positive thoughts and positive things will happen. Now, once through my journey, did I ever believe that I was not going to win this battle?
Wow.
She
Wow.
incorporated positive thinking. She came out of 11 months of chemo and radiation. Today, she is such a source of pride to our community. She is a role model to hundreds and hundreds of women because of her ability to think positive.
So let's analyze that. So how does a person, they wake up and, you know, they were expecting the guy to fix the heater. Okay. He didn't show up. Then the kid, the housekeeper didn't show up. Then all these helpers, whatever, you know, then the kid who was supposed to, you know, they were starting this new chart on the refrigerator where they were going to get up and get dressed and go to themselves. Is anyone going to school anymore in COVID? But anyway, whatever. I'm just scenario. Nothing is going right. It's like glass half full. Are you kidding? I don't even have a glass. You know, are you crazy? So the question is, where's that transition taking place? Where can people who are watching this show right now, where can they take what you're saying and look at it differently when everything is going, you know, again, there's circumstances, right? And then that's what's going on in our head. And it's very hard, you know, and sometimes, you know, I'll be like, in a bad mood or whatever, it does happen. You know, I'll be in a bad mood and it was like, no matter that, I don't know whether it's the circumstances that look bad or whether it's me looking at them bad. I've got black glasses instead of rose-colored glasses. I've got black glasses on or whatever. The question is, in that moment, how does a person think positive?
And Leah, can I add to that also? Because that's exactly, I mean, I was going to ask something similar, but to add to that, meaning when it's the big things, like someone's dealing with cancer or a sick child, right? You almost feel like, you're right, it's challenging and it's terrible, but it's almost like it's like bigger than you, and you almost feel like you have to get above it. But when it's the little things like you were just saying, which is exactly what I was thinking, like just can't get everything right in my day-to-day life, you almost feel guilty that you're not positive because you have so much to be blessed with, but at the same token, you're really struggling.
Okay, so first of all, we're humans and we will have these rough days, everyone, unless you're a tzaddik, a tzaddik v'tovlo, you're going to struggle. But when you know that hakol b'dei shemayim, that everything is coming from Hashem, chutz miyirat shemayim, and that pasuk is very, very important. And I think I say it in my head 25 times a day. Why do I say that? Let's say
Translate it for people.
Hakol b'dei shemayim, everything is in the hands of God. Chutz miyirat shemayim, except for if you're going to do good or not good. So, for example, if you're going to cheat or steal, that's your choice. But if your fridge breaks, which mine did this morning, or if your cleaning lady doesn't show up, which happened to me yesterday, all I say to myself is, and it could be, and I'm thinking back now, it's taken me many, many years, but learning Torah and learning from our Gedolim and learning from our Rabbeim, really, it exercises your brain to think a different way. And it really allows you to see the world through different glasses, as you were referring to before. But when you know that hakol b'dei shemayim, that everything is meant to be, and it's part of your journey, then you just say, okay, God, and I'll give you an example, which is part of my number 4, which is the reframing. So one morning I come upstairs, I'm getting my 6 children off to school. Most of them were getting ready by themselves, 6 going off to school. Zalmi is in his room, he's not coming down. So I run to his room, and as I approach his bedroom, setut minish gut, which means it wasn't good. I open the door and there's this smell. I felt like I was walking into a horse's stable. Not nice when you're living in a wonderful house in Toronto, okay? This is not a farm, this is a home. I walk in and there's my Zalmi. He was at that point, weighed 150 pounds. He's sitting on the floor. I don't know if this is way too I don't know, negative or revealing to your crowd, but you know, I think it's Leah, this is an honest show.
It's a reality. Yeah, no, I don't know where you're going with this. I'm just going.
I'll tell you where I'm going. Okay. So he's sitting there. He had covered himself totally with feces.
Aye.
Everywhere. Now, Down syndrome children are very, very
tactile.
Their sensorial the output is very, very needy, and they need a lot to be able to feel and touch and smell. He didn't get repulsed by the smell. It was all over him, all over the floor carpet.
Okay.
All over the
Okay.
Why am I saying this to you?
Yeah.
Because I walk in and my immediate reaction was, God, what are you thinking? You think I can handle this? What did I do in my life? That's my first initial thought was, what did I do in life to deserve this? Right? That's where the brain took me first.
Wow. I mean,
Then
anybody would.
We have a Yetzer Tov, and my reframing kicked in. My Hakol B'dei Shemayim kicked in, and then I sat down on the mattress that was clean, and I said, "Thank you, Hashem." I can't believe that I said those words. I said, "Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, that you made me strong. Thank you, Hashem, that I am healthy. No one has to take care of me and wash me. I am strong enough to take this child, this chubby little boy, and put him into the bath. I am healthy enough to deal with this. Thank you, Hashem, that I am not in a hospital sick, that no one's taking care of me. I have listen, this is my tough kid. Clearly, this is my mission. I will do it." And at that moment, I had almost like this total paradigm shift. I wasn't needy. I was empowered, because I said, if Hashem did this to me, he gave me the strength. And he did. My husband and I schlepped the mattress out to the garbage. We had someone come immediately, pull out the carpet. We made it work. But that scenario, Leah, showed me in life that you choose, because we are in control of our thoughts. I could choose to be needy and pouty and crying and pathetic, or I could choose to say, thank you, Hashem, for making, and I happen to be a very strong woman. I exercise, I have quite good muscles, I have a lot of strength. Now I know why. I had to carry my little 150-pounder into a bathtub and clean him up.
Without touching it. The thing that's amazing, I'm sure a lot of us women will think of, like, whatever we're dealing with that day, it's like, oh, this is so annoying. And like, well, I didn't have what Goldie, like, right? So Reed's going, yeah, like, wow, like things can be, wow, if we can handle that. Okay.
But I have a question, actually from my own, because I find that, which is beyond, you're so powerful and inspiring, and what you went through obviously makes you the person that you are. Obviously Hashem knew who he was giving it to. That's clear as day. But my question is sort of turned towards marriage, where, you know, when it's something big, like I said before, like a sick child or some big crisis, like you're sick, whatever it may be, that's like a big thing, you feel like you get the sympathy and you get people's support, and you have this, people are patting you on your back for doing such a good job. And there's a lot of, like, you do get bolstered along the way. But when you're struggling in your marriage and you're just finding that challenging and that tough, and you're just not getting it day to day, you feel so alone, and you feel so guilty, and you feel so down, like, I just can't get this right. And you just don't feel that positive. You feel very drained in a different way, and you don't have a very strong support system, because people look at you like, be thankful you have a husband and he's probably amazing and you're just being a baby, or whatever reasons people could come up with. But that's where I wish, you know,
I actually had a student once, and she said to me that her mother was kind of mentally not there. Her parents got divorced. And she said, so we were just left as kids growing up ourselves with no parenting and no guidance, nothing, you know. And she said, in a sense, we would have been a lot better off, God forbid, if my mom had died. You know, everyone would have rushed in, would have helped, would have had a support system, would have had this or whatever. But meanwhile, everyone's like, well, you know, they're handled, and we weren't, you know. And I actually didn't know what to say to her, except for, you know, thank God I got her into some therapy to heal from such trauma and drama and not being ever cared for and taken care of. But Sarit's exactly right. The whole issue of it's interesting. I just did a poll yesterday to see what are people's biggest issues in marriage, and one of the most common answers was feeling isolated, feeling like he doesn't get me, and feeling like we can't connect, and feeling like, you know, like I'm just in this myself and we're just parallel, and I don't want to divorce him and I don't want him to go, but how do I deal with those day-to-day things?
Leah, why aren't people picking up your book?
Okay, there's the answer.
I'll tell you why I'm saying that. we don't have to suffer in silence. There's no mitzvah to keep your isolation problems to yourself. There are mentors, there are marriage coaches, all kinds of levels of religiosity. There are such little, I'll just give you, a week ago, a friend called out to me. She lives on the other side of the United States of America. She had an issue with her husband, which I won't talk about here, of course. But I gave her one little insight. And she called me a week later and she says, I can't believe how that little insight you gave me, it made such a difference. And my husband's changed. And I'm like, in one conversation? She goes, yeah, I must have been doing something that was triggering and you focused on it and I got the trigger off. It's sometimes speaking to a friend, a mashpia or mentor. Doesn't even have to be a rabbi, just a mentor. It could be like a Rebbetzin. It could be your teacher, like you said, your student spoke to you. Everyone has to reach out. I was raised at a young age to find a mashpia, and my mashpia was my older cousin. She still is my mashpia today. For little things.
Explain mashpia. Explain mashpia.
Mashpia is a mentor. It's a mentor.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a big Rabbi Rebbetzin. It could be your teacher from high school, a teacher from seminary, a benos leader, and someone who you can just bounce off. And they don't have to be a genius. They just have to see things from outside.
Right. That's the whole thing. It's the objective viewpoint. I mean, you have to be careful with it because you can pick somebody who's negative and then you see things. I always say, if you're going to talk, never talk about your husband to anybody unless, except a couple of confidants. And if you have a confidant, and the way you can tell if they're good or not is if your husband does something and the person says, oh gosh, that's the nasty thing he said. And you should, I can't believe he said that. And like, it makes your relationship with your husband worse. They're not the right person. But if you go to them and you say, oh, my husband did such and such, and they, oh, that must've been painful for you to feel. But did you ever see from his perspective, he probably didn't even realize and didn't notice. And, maybe what you should do is just let a little time go by and then approach it, whatever it is, but they're giving advice to bring you closer to your husband. That's who you would turn to. That's very good. Okay. We have another question here, but I just want to get to the last one because, we talked about Hashem only gives you what you can survive, connecting to tzaddikim, think positively, the art of reframing, which was how you did that in that room, in that smelly room, let's call it. And then the last thing you point that you wanted to make in terms of.
The last one is basically a term that was really, really perpetuated by the Baal Shem Tov called Hashgacha Pratis. You know what that is? Divine providence. That Hashem is in control. And this is a teaching from Tehillim. I'll even read it for you. It's in chapter Lamed Zayin. It says, this is from David, King David, Melech Yisrael. Me Hashem mitzadei gaver kainanu. By the eternal are a man's footsteps established, and his way does he desire, which means Hashem is in charge of all our footsteps, believing the hashgacha, the divine providence in all our ways. And when we can see the world through the eyes that Hashem is, what does the word pratis mean? Hashem is our individual God. He didn't create the world and then left. The Jewish view is Hashem is constantly recreating the world. And every minute, that's what we say, Ein od milvado, because there's nothing besides for him. So if 1 minute he doesn't think of Goldie Plotkin doesn't exist. I am here and you are here and all of us are here because Hashem wills it. That's the idea of Hashgacha Pratis. And believing and understanding that and integrating that in your everyday, you look out. And I remember a friend of mine said to me, Goldie, you always have the best stories happen to you. How do these stories happen to you? They never happened to me. And I say, because I always look at the world through the eyes of Hashgacha Pratis. I look to see what is divine providence happening. If I'm in the wrong store at the wrong time, nothing's wrong. I'm meant to be there because I'm going to bump into someone that needs to see me, or I made a phone call and it was the wrong. There's always Hashgacha Pratis. If you live life through this. Now, I don't want anyone to think this is Goldie's Pollyanna and this whole world is so glorious and this picture is so rosy. But if you look at the paintings I make actually around my house.
He made that painting. Sorry, did you see that? Is that not normal? It's so
I was actually going to say, I love that painting behind her. It's like, I love it and the colors and everything. And it's such a nice background that she made it.
It's funny, if you look at my paintings, Leah, they're all around my house. They're lots of color. And I was sitting on the couch the other night and I was like, why do I put so much color? It's like, maybe because I try to align myself always with davening, with learning, with connecting to Hashem, with God, and bringing it into my daily life and believing Hashgacha Pratis. And I need to tell this story if I have 3 minutes.
Yes, yeah, okay, good.
About Zalmi.
Wow.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, 100%. We've got the questions, but we'll take them after. Go ahead.
So how do I see Hashgacha Pratis? I see it in my life every single day. So Zalmi, okay, by the time I finish, you'll all know him. He was...
Okay, hold on. Before you tell this, let me explain Hashgacha Pratis. What she's saying is that everything that happens is from Hashem. So you're walking down and you trip on something. That's because Hashem put something in your way. Suddenly you open the door. Something was supposed to come in 3 days, and you're like, oh, I need it. That's a birthday, and it's going to be late, whatever. And then it comes early. Every little subtlety of everything that's going on is designed and meant and manipulated by God Himself in your life. It's not, God isn't just sort of up there and he's taking care of the wind and the snow and the rain, and then for me, little old me, he doesn't care about me. No. The way we have a 3,000-year-old track record, bulletproof track record for success in life, and it gives over the Torah. It gives over that God is, everything that happens in the world. This ring was purchased by my husband for me, and it was the person who made it and the person who melted the silver, and they grew, and whatever. All of that was all orchestrated so that I could have this. Everything in your life, when you look at it, your phone, your glasses, your books on your shelf, everything was orchestrated to Hashem, by Hashem, to come to you. Right. This is the material world, the spiritual world. It's a very, very important concept, and very comforting to know that God is taking care of everything that's going on in your life.
That doesn't mean that you have to sit back and relax because God's taking care of everything. We have to do our hishtadlus, of course. But when
hishtadlus is efforts, we have to do our efforts.
But after we put in effort and something didn't work out, just say it wasn't meant to be.
That's it.
It wasn't meant to be. It takes, by the way, it takes a lot of anger and just a lot of anger and sadness out of you, because you just say, it wasn't meant to be. That job wasn't meant to be. Something better will come up. It wasn't destined for me. So
it wasn't meant to be. That's gorgeous. It's the most beautiful thing. Write it down, ladies. If you have it wasn't meant to be. It's such a beautiful stress reliever. Like right there, that's self-care. It wasn't meant to be. It'll ratchet your stress level down way. Okay, go with the story.
Wait, by the way, before she goes with the story, number one, somebody said that the story was so impactful. The original story for her was so impactful. This is from Facebook. She said, I appreciate this so much because as a single mom, and she has a son with special needs, the father doesn't live close or help. This brought me to tears. When my son can have a meltdown and I have to carry him and hold my head up high, I have to feel Hashem in those moments. He chose me to take care of this child, and Neshama, I feel blessed. So this is what we just got, of somebody saying that. And it's actually really funny, but someone on our staff who's actually supposed to be on the phone actually just said Hashgacha Pratis. She said God made that her video shouldn't work because of the fact that she's bawling throughout this whole show, and you would be distracted by all that crying. There's so much emotion. So this is beyond.
Wow.
Beyond.
Beautiful. Okay, let's hear the story about your son.
So it was the day of my daughter's Sheva Brachot, and my Zalmi was really getting in everyone's way. He was upset. Nobody was playing with him. So I told one of my sons, take him to the playground. He likes to go to indoor playground. Take him there with my babysitter, and we'll pick him up in an hour. So he gets dropped off. An hour and a half later, I say, oh my gosh, Zalmi's still at the playground. So I say to my husband, oh, do you mind going to pick up Zalmi? Then we won't be late for the Sheva Brachot, that party after the wedding. So my husband thinks, oh, Goldie didn't tell me which playground, but Zalmi likes to go, in the back of Burger King, they have these slides, and I don't know if you've never been there. Neither have I, but Zalmi noticed it, and he has his tantrums. So we would take him there to play in the playground with my babysitter. So my husband assumed he was there. He drives up, and he's going to call my babysitter to come out, because he won't walk into a Burger King, of course. And
as kosher, right? Okay.
As he looks for his phone, he realizes he left it at home. It's way too far to go back home. He decides he'll walk behind and bang on the glass window. So the babysitter will bring him out. My husband doesn't see the babysitter, doesn't see Zalmi, and he's going crazy. So he decides he's going to take his black hat. My husband wears a black Chabad hat. So he figures he'll put it over his head, No one will recognize him because he'll cover his face. As he walks into Burger King, he hears someone scream, "Oh my gosh, Rabbi Plotkin, what are you doing here?" My husband's like, "Oh my gosh, this is not what I was hoping."
The food is rabbinically approved. Yes. Hello.
Right?
He's coming to give it a hechsher.
Yeah.
He's coming to give it a.
It was horrible. But then he looked, who was this woman? She had originally been in our community. Her mother had become religious and she left out of frustration. She left the community, married a Greek Orthodox guy, got married in a church, was baptized and baptized her children. And this is the woman that's sitting at Burger King. And she looks at my husband. She says to him, "I cannot believe you just walked in. I'm sitting here with a cheeseburger. I know Passover is coming up soon." And I turned to my mother who had passed away. I turned to my mother in heaven. I say, "Mom, if you think that there's a God in heaven that could possibly give me a sign that the Jewish community would embrace me and my family again if I ever wanted to return, send me a sign." And she goes, "Rabbi Plotkin, I stopped those words, and within 30 seconds, you walked in."
Wow.
What happened afterwards is miraculous. We invited her for the Seder. Her son now is in yeshiva, her oldest son, and her children are keeping Shabbat. He had a Brit Milah when he was 14. His name is Menachem Mendel. And I have her permission to share this story. I won't reveal her last name, but the fact is that Zalmi's essence, what seems to be so bad and so negative, brought a whole family back to Judaism because of Hashgacha Pratis, because my husband went to the wrong playground. No wrong.
Okay, you got me speechless. That's
Wow.
pretty hard to
Wow.
do.
Wow.
What a story. So for people who don't understand the whole ins and outs of it, is she had been raised in the woman who was about to eat the cheeseburger right before Passover, she was raised in an Orthodox Jewish family, and she had left for whatever reason, anger, and issues can happen. This is, and it's
No, she wasn't
it's a
raised,
sad thing, but it's,
she wasn't raised in an Orthodox family. Her mother became observant later on in life, and she didn't want to follow the pattern.
And she didn't want to follow. Okay, fine. But anyway, what she's saying is that that coincidence, wink, 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 of the rabbi going into a Burger King, which he would never do because it's not kosher, and meeting up with this woman who would never have done, that never would have been welcomed back into a community, that made that connect. It's a beautiful story, and it just shows, that, in other words, the life path that woman took from that day forward, which, maybe is a harder choice or a holier choice, or there's something there. She was born in, and she was raised in one way, and then for her to do that is just a little bit of a miracle. But she's saying that because your son was underfoot in the thing, and he had to be, it's just, okay, we got the story. I just had to explain it a little bit for people who might not understand.
Yes.
Let's go to a quick question, and we're almost done.
Somebody on Facebook is actually asking, because now the whole time you're saying that there's never a wrong time and everything happens exactly how it's supposed to, and it's always on the right time. Well, is there ever a wrong time? Like, for example, marrying the wrong person, or being in the wrong relationship, or, doing the wrong thing. Is there ever a wrong time?
Well, for example, this woman who had married a Greek Orthodox, that was the wrong marriage. Clearly, that was the wrong marriage. But in a relationship, as I mentioned before to Leah, there are sometimes a journey that people have to take. And then there is the opportunity to get out. And it's a very important caveat to make. We don't condone abuse and toxic relationships. That's why, different than in other religions where they don't allow for divorce, Judaism does allow. And yes, the altar does shed a tear. And it's a very, very, very tragic moment. But for some women and men, this is the best situation they have to make. And for sometimes children have to be born from a certain set of parents. If you were led to that marriage with the right blessings and the right hashkafas, and you did the right thing, and then a fallout happened, and your mentor, your Rav tells you it's time to part ways, then clearly that's what has to be happening at that moment. But if you made it to the chuppah with the right blessings and you thought it was the right thing, and then it turns sour, then you have to follow Das Torah and you have to follow your Rabbanim and do what has to be done, not to suffer your whole life. But again, I have to really reinforce what I said before. We can't be living in a disposable society where it's like, oh, things aren't going good. I thought this was going to be a honeymoon, and it's really not. So I'm out.
Right.
Now, that's not considered a toxic relationship.
Right. And we're also getting into a situation where we're meshing with these are very high pay grade of understanding individual choice versus hashgacha pratis. That's a whole, there's a lot of books on that or whatever. So we're not necessarily going to cover that, but just to understand that, that we do have free choice. And if you've chosen somebody, sticking with it, which is what you're saying, and leaving no stone unturned, as if it was, getting out of it was cutting off an arm. And there's always something you can do, unless it's toxic and it's abusive, like you're saying, and things. Those you need to get professional help. And many things that are less than that need professional or could use professional help. I had a woman and she said, I want my marriage to be better. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I said, well, do you have an advisor? Do you have a therapist? Do you have somebody you turn to? She said, no, I kind of want to do that myself. Kind of like I feel competent, in doing that. And I said, it's fine. It might take you a year to accomplish the goals that you just told me. If you had a therapist, it might take 3 months. So this is all stuff to think about and put in the mix and to think about when you're thinking about this, the difference between hashgacha pratis and God running the world and us making choices. That is, as you said, that choice box, whether you choose to fight with your husband because you're mad at what he does, or you choose to talk to a Rebbetzin or talk to a confidant and say, how do I handle this? This is what he's saying to me, and it makes me so mad. And like, well, maybe you're mad because you grew up in a household and your father always tried to control you. It doesn't seem like your husband's trying to control you. He's just trying to run the household well. Maybe you need to deal with your anger. I'm making this stuff up, but I'm just saying there's always other ways to look at it, and getting the help you need, from a mentor or from a coach or a therapist or a rabbi or a Rebbetzin, that is the way to go. So to bottom line it, because we're at the end of the show, when the going gets tough, these are the 5 tools that you use that Hashem only gives you, to recognize that Hashem only gives you what you can handle, to connect to rabbis or Rebbetzins or mentors, to think positively, to reframe where you're holding. That story about the smelly room is quite sharp.
You'll never forget. Yeah,
never forget. And the hashgacha pratis, that whatever you're dealing with, God is somehow right with you, managing everything with you. Rebbetzin, can you how can people get in touch with you if they want more Rebbetzin Goldie Plotkin? They go to your Facebook page?
Yeah, they could reach out to me that way.
And they just do Goldie Plotkin, Plotkin. Yeah. And they type that in, whatever. They can follow you. They can see shows, classes that you gave there. Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and somebody really quickly, just before you leave, just answer really quickly. Someone on Facebook, Chana Batsheva, asked, was the woman's husband, did he become Jewish also or no? But then just a quick question, because she's like dying to know.
No, he didn't.
Oh, they're divorced.
Divorced. Oh, that's sad. How did the kids handle all of that?
The kids are being raised by their mother. They still have a relationship with their father, but the mother brings the Shabbos and the kashrus and the...
Is that why they got divorced, or there was problems already?
There were problems already.
I see. So she was kind of looking for answers of how to...
Yeah. And she found the answer with her husband in Burger King. It's great. It's amazing.
Wow. Okay.
Amazing.
That's a Pesach Krotzer. Okay. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. This is Leah Richeimer for the Ladies Talk Show. Thank you for being with us, everybody. Thank you for all the engagement and the typing in the questions. And we'll see you next time.